Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which part of the world you're joining us from. Nice to have you back with us for another edition of Agile DevOps TFW. My clock says it's noon central, so it's time for us to get started. My name is Ravi Verma. I am the co-founder of Agile DevOps DFW. So about oh gosh, it's like almost like 6 or 7 years ago, I met with two of my friends, Victor James and Fred Olson, in this Barnes and Noble on Beltline Road near Beltline and Tollway. And that's where we cooked up this meetup, Agile DevOps DFW. I tried to find out what happened around October 2014. And the only eventful thing I discovered was that the San Francisco Giants won the World Series. And then a baseball fan told me actually that's the year they beat the Texas Rangers. So this is a horrible, this is a horrible image to show here that shows how ignorant I am about baseball. So I will change it. So I'm sorry if I opened anybody's wounds by any fans in Dallas Fort Worth. But anyway, that's how we created Agile DevOps DFW. And our goal was to explore the interconnections of Agile and DevOps. We've started meeting twice a month, first and third Thursdays, usually noon central. When I created this meetup, I wanted to alternate Agile and DevOps, but I haven't been as successful because I don't have as strong of a network in the DevOps space. So I welcome speakers, especially if you are passionate about DevOps, or if you can introduce me to DevOps speakers, I'll be grateful. We also have all the recordings. So Janie puts all of the recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you missed any of our previous meetups, you want to see, check out the recording. You can go to our Smooth Apps YouTube channel, subscribe, and you'll be notified whenever we publish a new video. All right. Something that Janie and I are very passionate about is a nonprofit that we are both part of. It's called Agile Patriots. This is a nonprofit where we try to pay back a small portion of our debt to US military families. So we do free Agile training, coaching, mentoring to US military veterans and spouses. We have graduated 6 cohorts, and we would like to believe we've made a positive impact to at least 42 families. You can see some of their faces here. We are launching our 7th cohort coming up soon. I think it's starting in May this year. So if you are also called to give back to our military families, here are some ways in which you can help. You can speak, give a speech on or a presentation on anything that can help our military veterans and spouses, integrate into civilian life and be successful. You can also just give a 5-minute lightning talk with Q&A. They have so many questions about interviews, about what does it feel like to, be in the civilian workforce, what are hiring managers looking for. So if all you can afford is a 5-minute talk, we'll be grateful for that. You can give short presentations. If you want, we'd love for you to consider our graduates for internships and job opportunities. And if you can give us donations, this is all self-funded from our savings. So we'd love to get any donations you can afford. All right. So this is about Agile for Patriots and how you can give back to our military families. A little bit about Smooth Apps. This is my company. Some of the ways in which we help with Agile transformation. We typically start with an agility assessment. We try to get Agile executives aligned, so they're all pulling in the same direction. We help with Agile leadership, Agile culture. We help with Agile product management and alignment of teams. We help launch teams, launch or reboot teams, and then we can help you with complete Agile transformation and be there with you in the boat as you navigate these choppy waters of a very rapidly changing world. All right. If you don't have time to hire us as your advisors, that's okay. We've made a lot of free content available to you. You can go to smoothapps.com. We've got free blogs. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have new videos. We've got our presentations on LinkedIn. We've got webinars. Join these meetups. You can get free wisdom from our speakers, and then follow us on LinkedIn. All right. So that's a little bit about our company. Let's switch to logistics for this webinar. You're going to be in listen only mode. Janie and I will be monitoring your comments through the chat panel, Q&A panel. Please interact with us, and questions will be handled at the end of the session. So at the end, we will select the questions that are most meaningful, and then our panel is going to answer those questions. Okay. Those questions that cannot be answered during the session, we will see if our panelists might be able to answer them offline. So with that, I want to welcome our panelists and give you a little bit of background. So we've got 4 speakers, Nadia, Amanda, Bill, and Laura, from this amazing company called Insperity, which is a real blessing for entrepreneurs and business owners like me. So in a nutshell, what Insperity does is it provides you this superpower, the people management and people nurturing superpower. If you are an entrepreneur in a business and you are unable to have your in-house HR, right? So I was fortunate enough to connect with Laura, and I follow Laura on LinkedIn. She always has very thoughtfully curated content, which is valuable for entrepreneurs like me in terms of how do you grow your business, how do you stay in compliance, what are the emerging trends, and how do you take care of your people. And so as our clients have started asking us for advice on how should they start planning to bring back their people in a post-COVID situation, I thought, I didn't have any of the answers to the questions that they were asking. And that's where I thought, well, maybe Laura and Laura's colleagues from Insperity can answer these questions, because I bet these questions are on the minds of many organizations that are trying to figure out how to bring back their people. So that's the reason I requested Laura to help us out. And Laura has brought back a team of superheroes from Insperity to share their wisdom. They have access to a huge data set, a huge of industries and companies that are asking them these questions, and they're providing this advice. And we are lucky that they are providing this advice free of cost to us in this meetup. So please join me in welcoming the Insperity team, Laura, Nadia, Amanda, and Bill. And so I am going to stop sharing. And Laura, if you could please start sharing and take it away and introduce yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, so let me get my screen up. I appreciate the introduction very much, Ravi. I'm glad everyone's here with us today. Can we see the screen okay? Thumbs up, Ravi? All right, fantastic. And so welcome, like Ravi said, my name is Laura Klecker. I'm a business performance advisor at Insperity. And joining me today is Nadia and Amanda. They're HR specialists on our service team. And then we have Bill, who is a district manager within Insperity. And so today we're going to share with you 5 ways to design your agile organization for the post-COVID environment. We're going to talk about some things to consider, not only today, but as we phase through this transition, what it's going to look like post-pandemic. What are some things to be thinking about, things that we need to address with our employees in the workplace, and just some stories and thought sharing for you today. So to start off with, we will have Amanda kick us off. So we're going to start off with Amanda, and she's going to share with us some ways to ensure our employees' safety and comfort as we look to bringing people back into the workplace, or maybe we're going to have a hybrid workplace where they're in-house and remote. We're going to talk about vaccine guidance. As most people know, at least here in Texas, everyone over the age of 16 is now eligible for vaccine. So what does that mean for you and your team? Then we'll transition to Bill, who's going to share some information with us and some knowledge on sustaining that company culture and communication that's so vital today and as we transition into tomorrow. And then Nadia is going to close us out with touching on a very important topic, which is mental health awareness, and then also covering a topic that has been on a lot of organizations' minds today and as we go through this pandemic: diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm going to hand off to Amanda now to share with us more about employee safety, comfort, and what that means going back to the office. Amanda?
Thank you so much, Laura. So Hi, everyone. So I'm going to share a little bit more with you. We're in the transition and we are talking more and more with our own clients about, where to start. What do we do? It's been a year in the trenches of working remote, our employees on temporary layoff, and where do we start with bringing our back? So whether that's bringing our people back into the office, bringing our people back to work, where do we go? What do we do? And so that starts with, let's get our office ready. Let's get our workplaces ready. And so that's the infrastructure piece. Part of that is making sure we have social distancing protocols in place. Can we make sure that our employees are remaining 6 feet apart? Do we have workstations sufficiently spaced apart? Are we able to stagger breaks? So for those non-exempt employees in those states that require the breaks, or do you have breaks set up? And the break rooms, we want to make sure that if we are in a state that still has those mandates in place, that we do have the space for people to feel comfortable to be able to take those breaks and not feel like they are going to be in an overcrowded space. Additionally, do we have the necessary sanitation and preventative equipment available to our people? So face masks, disinfecting wipes, sanitizer, hand sanitizer, things like that. We want to make sure we have available for our people. If we don't have available, are we going to be reimbursing to our team for those type of things? My preference for you is to be making sure that we have available to our team those basics of face masks and things like that. Next, what about temperature checks? So I will tell you, one of the things and one of the myths in the beginning was, we felt that people would want to do those pre-screens when people came into the door, and we'd want to document that. So one of the things that was discovered as we moved along was, if you were going to have people fill out that questionnaire in the beginning, that became a medical record. And so the guidelines around those pieces of paper that documented what was that person's temperature, did they have these symptoms, medical records have to be kept forever and ever and ever. And so I'm sure many people and many organizations and employers didn't want to keep these pieces of paper forever and ever and ever. So my guidance to you is, if you are going to be doing temperature checks, it's going to be having someone there. If you have an admin or you have a receptionist that's by the door, or if you have a teammate that can just have someone take a temperature for someone, just make sure that they're under whatever guideline you want to set. And it is typically CDC 100.4. Make sure that they're under that temperature guideline and be on their way. You don't need to formally write it down. And my recommendation is not to, so you don't have to keep that as a medical record for years and years. Next, we want to make sure that you have conditions under which employees should notify their manager if they feel ill. So the cough, the fever, difficulty breathing, those symptoms that we identify with COVID-19. What are you going to make sure that we allow or not allow them to come into the workplace, and what is the protocol for when they should work, call in sick, use sick time? And then again, with a recent rollout today of the American Rescue Plan and the paid sick leave, how are we going to go about that? Do you want to use that voluntary time off? Do you want to offer that to your team, or do you want to require them to use their own paid sick leave? Lastly, office cleaning. So one thing that we've been having a lot of conversations with our clients is the concerns from their team of not feeling safe, which I'll touch more deeper on further down, but we want to make sure that you are at least covering the basis of maybe stepping up some of your janitorial schedules for like nightly cleans, or even an extra or deeper clean on a weekly basis with your janitorial staff. Or even, as I touched above, the availability of cleaning supplies to your employees to make sure they can clean in between halfway through the day, or maybe they're going to use the copier, they can wipe it down before they're pressing the buttons. So just making sure that they feel like you have taken extra steps to make them feel safer, and I guess just more like you've taken the extra step to make them feel like they have the supplies needed to cover their bases where they don't feel like they're going to touch something and pick it up. So what steps are you going to take to bringing your staff back? Are you going to require everyone to come back on May 1st? Or do you want to take the phased approach? So I just had a conversation with one of my clients today where starting today, actually, they are going to do a rotational approach. So each team is going to come in for a rotational time. So they're going to rotate like a week in the office to get everybody used to coming back, because let's face it, we've all been working remote for the last year. It's totally new. We're all getting wiped out by coming in and being around people. We're not used to that interaction. Not to mention, a lot of people have kept their kids home, or childcare is different now. Schools are handling things differently. So it's a lot of change when we've been in a certain routine for the last year. And then they're also giving their teams a head up that effective, I think it's like May 3rd is that Monday, that they're expecting everybody to come back more consistently May 3rd. So whether that's going to be a consistent 3 days a week in the office, that's what they're going to do. But they wanted to use this rotational approach by not overwhelming people with a full staff of people in the office, but at least getting them used to being back with their team. So that's something you can consider as well. Next, we want to make sure that we read some of those standard policies that were used a little more often when we were all back in the office pre-COVID. So think of things like attendance policies. We probably really haven't touched on those while we've all been working remote. So think of the call-out process when we were sick. So while we've been remote, if you didn't really feel well, didn't really feel like getting up and getting dressed, you didn't really have to when you were working remote, right? You could roll out, throw your hair up in a messy bun, maybe brush your teeth, and then you could sit down and you could knock out some work. Maybe you didn't have to turn on that Zoom camera, and you could still be productive. Well, you can't really do that if you now have to go to the office. So we might have to just send out some reminders on some of those policies that are still important when we go back to the office. So think of revisiting your attendance policy, your sick leave process, your process of PTO, and just what does that look like? Submitting that PTO process, as well as dress code. So let's not forget that you may dress a little bit more comfy while working from home rather than going into the office. So people may forget about what's acceptable more so in the office than at home. Next, I wanted to provide you guys with a tool that I thought was super neat. It's a COVID-19 screening tool that is provided by Apple. And if Laura, you can just click on it really quick.
It's coming along. Give it a few seconds.
Yes, okay. So you guys can see in the meantime, this photo on your left-hand side of the screen is a screenshot of what the end result is, but I would like to just show you what kind of a few steps into it. So this COVID-19 screening tool, like you go through, you answer some questions, so you click start screening, and Laura will just go through and just click a few answers. So we're obviously going to say it's not an emergency. You click on your age. You say if you tested or you didn't test. So she'll say she was tested. And then you say like, wait, what symptoms you're having. And if they're having any impact, how severe they are. So pretty much you go through and you answer a series of questions. at the end, this screening tool will spit out what you see on the left-hand side over here. And it'll tell you essentially a series of steps of should you contact your healthcare provider, should you avoid contact, what emergency signs you should look for, and also like if you should go get tested again, how much further you should quarantine for, and things like that. It's a pretty handy tool. So if you're looking at going back into the office, it might be something you even want to consider doing, even if you have people that are experiencing symptoms, it could be a really cool tool you might want to consider. So if any of you are interested in having a link for that tool, that's something we can send out to you as well. So we can send that out. So moving on, the other side of the moving back into the office piece is the people strategy. So one thing as the employer you might think is that employees are excited of getting back into the office, grabbing lunch together, catching up on all the things that have happened, swapping homeschooling stories, right? Well, maybe not so fast. As an employer, your view of returning to work may be a little bit different than the idea your employees have. So how do you help employees to prepare to return to work? We want to start with advance notice of the date they will be expected to return. So let's say maybe we give them about a 30-day notice, 2 weeks to 30-day notice. You have to think that employees who have child or other family care responsibilities may not be fully ready to return to work as soon as the office is going to open up. Employees in these situations may need to ramp up time to get their care requirements squared away. So maybe if someone, like I have known of childcare centers fully closing and all sorts of different things. And even there could have been a COVID case that's happened in their school, and it just might hit on the exact time where they have been taken out of their class for 10 days for quarantining. So you might have individual situations that you may need to accommodate in that time. So just make sure you're being reasonable in your expectation of having them return to work. You also want to make sure that you communicate that message. So scheduling a company or team-wide call to let everyone know of the reopening. So you want to let them know at the start of the meeting that you are available to discuss the topics covered on the call individually and with the employees if preferred. So you got to remember, not all employees are going to be comfortable just asking the questions right on the call or the meeting, especially if they have a unique situation that they want to chat with you with. They may not be comfortable just talking about that in front of everybody else. So making them aware that you are going to be available to them to talk one-off is going to be very important. You also want to be prepared with the dates and reinstatement plans. Will it be business as usual when you return, or will there be other protocols in place, as we talked about before? You don't have to go into all details about what's going to be changed when you go back, but some general high levels during that call will be really important. What can employees expect upon their return? Will they be required to acknowledge a return to workplace policy or guidelines? That's something we typically recommend our clients to do. We have a policy that we send out to our clients to consider, to send out to their employees to sign, as well as an acknowledgement to their employees to say that they're returning and they haven't been recently exposed to COVID, to make sure that we're not bringing any recent exposures into the office. Additionally, will the company require or allow mitigation measures such as temperature checks? So letting them know when they walk in the door that day, what should they expect? Making sure that they're prepared. Next, we want to make sure we're equipping our managers. So remember, these are the people that are going to be on the front lines of their team members. So we want to make sure that they are prepared, making sure that they're aware of all these policies and protocols, making sure that they're able to answer the questions and they're not faced with, I don't know the answer, guys, I'm sorry. We want to make sure that they're equipped to answer those questions confidently and also are able to support their team in this transition as best possible. They may not know all the answers right then, especially because there's going to be a lot of unique situations, but you don't want to make them feel like they're left out on the front lines to have no support, no answers, or anything like that. Excuse me. You also are going to have, unfortunately, some team members who had the chance over the last year that were able to work remote. And so you're going to have those people that are going to say, wait a minute, I was able to work remote for the last year. Why can't I continue to work remote? And you're going to have those refusals to want to come back to the workplace. So how do we handle this? And so you need to think, you need to ask questions. Is this a generalized fear of them wanting to come back to the workplace because of a generalized exposure of COVID or sickness? Or do they really have a specific reason for their fear, and one that could be a protected reason? And when I say protected reason, do they have a disability that could be a reason that needs to really have an accommodation? And so they may, and that reason may actually cover them for where you should be thinking about letting them work from home for a continued period. So that's one where you should be working with your HR partner on, and one where you also, if you have gone through the steps to make sure that you have complied with all the appropriate measures to support safety and reduce risk in the workplace, you may not have to provide that accommodation. And additionally, you do not have to provide the accommodation if it will cause an undue hardship on the organization. But I will also tell you that it's very, very hard to prove to the EEOC and to the ADA and things like that, the undue hardship piece, especially in a situation like this. So you want to make sure that you have crossed your T's and dotted your I's. So there are, in these situations, a lot of compliance considerations such as OSHA, NLRA, ADA, FSCRA, when addressing employees and their concerns about whether return to the workplace or not at this time. So while compliance is a key part of HR best practice guidance, thoughtful HR is clearly moving beyond simply determining what the law requires an employer to do and asking instead, what should we do? What is in the best interest of the employee and employee morale, employee engagement? And so that's where I'm going to leave you with that. What should we do as the employer? Next, I'm going to move on to vaccine guidance and mandatory versus voluntary, which is also a huge topic right now. So many organizations have asked about, should we mandate vaccines? We want to mandate vaccines. And so one question we get is, can we mandate vaccines in our organization? Our main guidance here is that we don't recommend mandating vaccines. Instead, we just recommend strongly encouraging vaccines. So typically we don't see mandated vaccine policies only if they are a healthcare organization or an organization that works closely with the public or with children, such as daycares and things like that. So there are 4 key takeaways that we have from the EEOC's updated guidance. And those are that employers, you can require a vaccination, but they should be job related and consistent with business necessity. So similar to like healthcare organizations, like I mentioned, you can require proof of vaccination. However, you don't need more than that other than the proof of vaccination. So seeing like the vaccination card. Employers should be prepared to accommodate employees with disabilities and religious objections. Employers should be careful with health pre-screens, as they could have implications with ADA and possible GINA too. So that is the Genetic Information Act. So examples of accommodations include, so accommodations if someone came to you and said, I have a religious or a medical accommodation request and I can't get the vaccine. So some of the accommodations include requiring use of a face mask at all times while on site, removing the employee's workstation, temporarily reassigning the employee, approving a teleworking arrangement, offering a leave of absence. And so if you mandate a flu shot or COVID-19 vaccination, what specific risks and responsibilities must you consider and address? So you got to think of it too, if you're going to mandate it, one of the things you want to remember is you probably want to consider paying for it or reimbursing the employee for it. There's potential liability or for adverse reactions. There's so much unknown still with the vaccine that if you are going to make employees get it, we don't know if there could be lawsuits in the fact of them turning around and blaming you and saying, well, my employer made me get it. So even if the liability is negated, you may still need to defend it. You need to address whether time spent getting the vaccine will be treated as hours worked. And then also you need to have built out how an employee can seek an exception as an accommodation. So those employees who do have a medical reason or in a religious exemption reason as to why they cannot get the vaccine, you need to provide them a process to seek that accommodation. So you're vaccinated, now what? So we're just getting to this point kind of with all these people getting vaccinated now. And we're just turning the corner of being over a year into this pandemic. So the CDC says that you are fully vaccinated after either the 2 weeks after the second dose of your vaccine, or after 2 weeks after your Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So essentially, they have provided guidance that you can gather indoors with other people who are fully vaccinated without wearing a mask, or you can gather indoors with unvaccinated people from another household. But what hasn't changed is the CDC says that in public or in a workplace, they're still saying that you still need to you still need to protect yourself, like wearing a mask, staying 6 feet apart. And so I'm just going to leave you here with that. Essentially, the CDC hasn't changed their guidance, that they still recommend that in workplaces, you still should be providing masks, you still should be staying 6 feet apart, because we don't have enough information in terms of how effective the vaccine is yet. And also what the misconception is in a lot of people, even though you're getting the vaccine, it's not eliminating the chance of getting COVID, it's just lowering the severity of how bad you will get COVID. So keep that in mind as your workplace and as your employees get the vaccine. There's still the spread of COVID. And so we want to make sure that we are still protecting our people and still making people feel comfortable to come to the workplace.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That's a lot of great information. She is our knowledge base for everything that revolves around our employees, going back to the workplace and our vaccine. Thank you so much, Amanda, for sharing your knowledge. And we're going to transition to communication and sustaining culture with Bill Ham, who's going to share some examples of how he's put this into place with his team.
Thank you, Laura. Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Ham, and I've been a sales leader with Insperity for about 8 years now. I work very closely with Laura and Amanda and Nadia. We all office together, and it's been a pleasure together, and thank you for having us. Today, I want to address the importance of communication and company culture in the workplace, particularly in this post-pandemic world. As companies, leading through, I lead a team of salespeople, and leading through the pandemic was challenging. But I will say that as a team, we feel like we're closer together now. We found new efficiencies as a team, And we've developed a new success equation. Now, what we're doing as we're coming out of the pandemic is we're trying to find those best practices that work best for our team culture and our company culture. So today, as companies emerge out of any crisis for that matter, their focus should really be on their people and taking care of their people. We do have flux in the workplace. That means, so what does that mean? Well, first of all, we have to take a long, hard look at our company values, because in 2020, in this pandemic, our company values were shaken. They were challenged, to say the least, which really, in turn, affected our culture, because culture is built on values. So some values that resonated the most with us, I would say, during the pandemic, and what we're focusing on as we come out of it, is teamwork. Just being separated from our coworkers really did put a hamper on collaboration. Transparency, how we communicate to and what we tell our employees and what we tell our client base and prospects. It's very important. A lot of companies didn't know what to communicate during the pandemic, but that is a value that we hold very dear. Accountability is another one that everyone on this phone call can relate with, getting the job done and tracking cadence. And another big one for us was learning, educating, and training. About half of the prospects that we meet with do not know how we can help that at Insperity. So we spend a large portion of our time training and educating. That was our default during this pandemic. As soon as we were sent home, our company went to that value, and we started putting together webinars, business resiliency type webinars that we gave every couple of weeks from our CEO. As you remember, the PPP loans were a source of a lot of confusion for people. So, we put together a checklist of things that needed to get done, things to consider and move forward with. So that transparency was very key. Accountability and and that was learning and training. So each one of these values we've constantly given attention to, and I'm going to share with you now some ideas or some solutions to consider while we're moving out of this pandemic. One thing is for sure, there are a lot of things that have changed, and a lot of things that will continue to change, and finally, a lot of things that will never change. What I mean by that is we are in a new world of virtual blending, and that's where we are today. Experts do not think that is going to go away. We're going to have to find new ways of communicating to not just our employees, but also our prospects. In order to do that, we have to be adaptable. We have to focus on adaptability, or otherwise known as cultural adaptability. And what does that mean? It means we hold true to our old values with new practices. Okay, so a simple example of that is when we all went home with the pandemic, our schedules changed. We had to be educators. We had to take on roles we weren't used to taking on. So inclusion at the workplace was a problem. So through our leadership, we were able to acquire technologies to allow, like the Zoom or team meetings, to allow our people to be part of their jobs and be flexible at that time. We're going to have to continue that moving out of the pandemic. As we start returning to the workplace, for us, it's still involuntary. So we're going to have to be as flexible as we can and use technology to bring people in. Another thing about adaptability is promoting and hiring from within or out in the market. It's important to hire adaptable, resilient people. Now, I've got a question, as I've spoken about this before, how do we know when someone's resilient? Well, look, folks, we have a good test market right behind us. And what I mean by that is we can ask behavioral interview questions when we're looking for new, asking them, how they overcame some of the challenges they ran through during the pandemic. There's also assessment testing out there, such as Index, DISC studies, which can be leading indicators of how resilient people are in the workplace. So these are ways that you can help find those type people and to focus on adaptability. The next nugget or the next solution is be transparent. We have to over communicate, over communicate, over communicate. By that being said, we have to share the bad news with the good news. And we have to set clear expectations, okay? What I mean by clear expectations, let's say to our employees, key performance indicators. This is data that we've been tracking for years and years. What do we have to do to be successful? An example key performance indicator is in a sales world, I have to meet with 4 people to get 1 engaged client, okay? We had to dial back on that during COVID because it wasn't realistic. So if the integrity of your KPIs are not realistic, you're going to scare your employees away. They're going to feel like they're up against a mountain that they're not going to be able to climb. The good news is we've been able to reevaluate those and inch them back up as we're coming out of the pandemic because we see opportunities opening, but we're also seeing more efficiencies in this world that we're living in. We're meeting with a lot more people. We're having a lot more meetings. There's not as much windshield time, that sort of thing. And the last thing is relying on structure. Business owners, CFOs, CXOs have been tasked with recreating a new structure for their employees. And what does that mean? Well, structure on how often do I meet with my employees? What do I share with them? I'm not going to get into how often we met at Insperity, but we wanted to make sure that all our values were being attended to, okay? So it wasn't in every day we're gonna meet because we didn't want to compromise trust with our employees. I know about one team that met with their team twice a day in the morning, at night, before the end of the day, 5 days a week with no structure around the meetings, or it was mainly, if I want to see you working, so let's have a meeting. I will tell you that 80% of that team is no longer with the company because of that. So we have to be real careful not to compromise trust when we're setting up a new structure. So what does a new structure look like as far as technology goes? We know what we're doing here. We're on a Zoom virtual environment, but there's project management software out there that could be applicable to your industry. They could take the employees out of the email environment and put them into a more focused job-related site or platform. We have Zoom, Microsoft Teams here, so we're able to be flexible with meeting. And I will say there's also client-facing new technology out there that's really cool, to where you can share videos with your clients. We used it during the pandemic to book meetings. One of our advisors booked about 30% of their meetings by sending the prospects videos so they could familiarize themselves and see them and trust who they're looking at before setting the meeting. You can also do this in a general environment. It does not have to be a sales environment. It could be a project environment to where you're letting your clients know what the next steps are. It's a new form of communication. And everyone is saying that we are going to be blending meeting in person and video are going to be some of our primary ways of communicating. So we need to adopt that, okay? So those are some things, just a quick recap, the solutions to think about when redefining your culture coming out of the pandemic. Be transparent, be adaptable, hire adaptable people, and rely heavily on structure. So Laura, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bill, for sharing that with the team and with the group. And I will say I'm on Bill's team, and he has done a fantastic job on communication and helping sustain the culture within our group. So thank you for sharing that today. We're going to move over to Nadia, who's going to close us out with some highlights on mental health awareness and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Hi, thank you, Laura, so much for the introduction. And I just want to end our call with some things that that we need to be more aware of. We need to be more mindful of, things that are not specifically being spoken about too much until we get to the realization that we need to with our employees. You know, we want to make sure that you are proactive instead of being reactive when these things come to mind. As employers, we want to talk about the concerns that extend, you know, beyond the employee's physical health. This pandemic itself and the recession and the social unrest of everything that happened last year caused an increased anxiety, even depression and stress in the general population. Employers before COVID had been increasing their health benefits, and after COVID-19, this was something that, you know, is much more of a necessity now. During the first couple of weeks of the pandemic, EAP, so the Employee Assistance Program, reported a 20% increase in the calls that they were receiving. And nearly 72% of companies plan on improving now their mental health offerings for this year and next year, and increase the number of paid sessions with mental health counselors for employees while waiving lower co-payments and adding more digital tools, kind of like the ones that Amanda showed, in regards to helping people and promoting mental health awareness and promoting health in general to all of the employees. This is also a great time to start looking at all the free programs that are offered by the government. The CDC recommends that where there is increased stress and anxiety, that gets in the way of your daily activities. So it's not even necessarily just at work, but any of your daily activities, that you consider contacting the healthcare providers, and also references the disaster distress helpline. So there are a lot of different tools within the CDC website that are free tools and not necessarily a cost to your organization, where you can gather information to pass to your employees. And so we definitely like to promote even outside tools that can be beneficial for everyone. There are also even tools for caregivers. So there are caregivers for frontline childcare. So if your organization falls under the frontline care providers right now during this time, there are tools for them as well. The benefits of these programs they bring are so beneficial, not only to the individuals, but to the employers as well. They improve productivity and they improve the employees and their dependents' ability to successfully respond to challenges. They help you manage stress. We know stress is a big part of our work nowadays. So it's definitely good to have that in your back pocket so you can help your employees. They improve mental well-being, how to manage your family issues outside of work. They support disaster and emergency preparedness, but they bring so many more benefits to an employee and to the employer. Unfortunately, in the workplace, mental illness remains largely a taboo subject still. In 2019, there was a study by a health benefits administrator that concluded that 68% of the employees still worry that reaching out about a mental health issue can negatively impact their job security within their organization. Giving your leaders and training them and giving them the appropriate tools to have discussions about mental health is very vital. Making them aware of what is also covered by the law is even more impactful on how they handle situations in the workplace. Like Amanda stated earlier, we need to be aware of how this is also mandated also by the EEOC, by the federal government. Mental health conditions are still covered under Americans with Disabilities Act. So this means that employers must make reasonable accommodations for workers with such disorders to perform their responsibilities. However, let's also take into consideration that employees must be willing to divulge their need for modifications. So supervisors, managers, your leadership team, they need to start thinking about how they can approach these situations. For example, supervisors might think that someone who regularly turns in their work late or misses deadlines is just being lazy and not productive within the organization. But when the manager knows that the individual is dealing with a mental health issue, they might be able to adjust the employee's schedule or allow the person to work from home, kind of how we've been doing. So like Amanda said, there is a big interaction that has to be taken place within the employee and the employer in regards to these illnesses. Making sure that your managers and your leadership team knows what the effects are, that you can't just fully, terminate an employee if they've come to you and they've let you know that there is some sort of issue that they have going on within work or within their life. So some of the things that we want to make sure that you're aware that, that you're implementing things that could help your employees with mental health awareness. Some of the things that, giving you an example of some things that other companies have done. So like Deloitte, they employed chief wellness officers. So this could be anybody within your organization in the management position, that they're responsible for providing resources to improve employees' mental, physical, and emotional health. Another example is Prudential Financial. They aim to normalize the topic of mental health by having company leaders share their personal stories in video messages as well. So these are some little things that you can actually do within your organization that you can actually, change and promote mental health awareness within your own company. I will have to say, finding that flexibility when you're returning to employees to work is also a big must. I know that there are stressors. I would take myself, for example, working in a remote environment during COVID, going back into the office so quickly can definitely have an impact even on a person, such as I felt myself. I was talking on a daily basis with people, interacting. And the first few times that, we decided to kind of meet in person, go back to the office, I know it was draining. It was something that definitely made me think twice about going to the office. So it's having those interactive conversations with your leaders about what is the best way to help your employees get back into the ease of things, because there was a big change and a big shift with mental health awareness. So next, I wanted to also discuss a little bit about another thing that came to light in 2020, and that was the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, companies were faced with more challenges. Events that happened across the United States started impacting people as a whole. The big topic was diversity and inclusion. So to understand and appreciate diversity in the workplace, you must develop a deep understanding of yourself, as well as an unconscious bias, any unconscious bias that you might have. Your ability to use a variety of the strategies to effectively deal with diverse situations is very important for your organization. Equally as important that you have the ability to share these effective strategies openly and leverage the diversity that already exists within your organization. So some of the tools that we actually recommend that you use that could be beneficial for your organization would be to include a diversity and inclusion survey to help identify employee sentiment and their current state within the organization. After the completion of the survey, you can have strategic planning meetings with some of your partners or leadership team that can identify any of the actions to help create and implement an actionable plan within your organization. This could eventually also affect your code of conduct. And you know that the company's code of conduct is a key part of its ethical framework. It outlines the organization's key ethical principles and provides guidance on the expected standard of behavior for the employees. So the code essentially serves as an important resource for employees as they might navigate the sometimes challenging waters of the workplace. So we definitely want to make sure that we're covering how this is going to affect your company as a whole. So companies are under intense scrutiny right now in the media, by investors, by customers, over the way people operate. Now you're seeing that people prefer to do their business with companies and individuals that share their own values and avoid businesses that they feel are unethical or secretive, or even, in their mind that they're corrupt. So a good way to understand how diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to be playing a big part in the organization as a whole. And organizations and their employees who hold themselves to high ethical standards often react to the rewards of fair and honest business practices, both financially and in terms of the public. So being mindful that if there is some sort of unrest with your organization, that you're actually being reactive, holding these surveys, opening the door to questions, and also making sure that if you are going to open the door to changes within your organization, you're making it public to your employees, that you actually follow through. Because not only is this going to impact your employees, but this is also going to impact how your business moves forward in the eyes of people outside.
Great. Thank you so much, Nadia, for sharing that. And thank you to Amanda and Bill as well. As you can see, we have just so much knowledge and information to share with you. And there is a lot that goes into what is going to happen as we transition into the post-COVID-19 pandemic and what's going to be next for a lot of organizations for them. So I know we didn't give a lot of time for questions, and I apologize for that, Ravi. But just on some final notes here before we hand it back off to Ravi. First of all, I want to thank Ravi very much for this opportunity and for all that he is doing to impact the community and the culture and the people that he works with. So thank you to Ravi for all that he does. And really, when we look at a lot of what we discussed today, the first things we want to do is take care of ourselves and make sure we're addressing our own mental health and physical conditions and what we need for self-care. That will allow us to help to support our teams around us and lift them up. And that will ultimately have an impact on our clients, customers in the community. So thank you so much for your time. If you do have any questions that you'd like to send us directly concerning anything we shared today, you can reach out to me. This is my email and phone number. If it's for Nadia or Amanda or Bill, I will be sure to forward it on. We also would love to hear from you. What are you doing right now within your organizations to prepare for the post-COVID-19 pandemic? What are the things that you think are most important and valuable to you, your team, and your customers right now? The more we learn from other organizations and what they're doing, the better we can be as a resource to you in the community. So please feel free to reach out. We'd love to sit down and chat with you, learn more about what we're doing and how we can be a better resource. So with that, I will hand this over to Ravi. And we'll go from there.
Very good. Thank you so much. I just want to draw some parallels between what you shared and how closely it's connected to the Agile movement. So for instance, Bill was talking about principles and values, and the Agile movement is based on the Agile Manifesto, which are the set of guiding values and the Agile principles. Scrum is based on empiricism, which is a guiding principle, which is based on transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Bill was talking about building a resilient organization, and a resilient organization needs to look at what's happening around the world, because we can't control the world, we cannot predict the world, but the true North Star has to be, who do we aspire to be? And as Amanda was saying, what's the right thing? What should we do? And if we are always striving to do the right thing by our employees, our investors, we will screw up. Failure is guaranteed. But at least we can look back and say, we tried to do the best we can with what we had, with what we knew, right? And Maya Angelou says, do the best you can with what you know. And when you know better, do better. So I love what, how closely your message is tied to the Agile movement, and also Nadia's message about diversity. One thing that Agile organizations do is leadership doesn't try to solve all the problems by themselves. There is a humility in leadership to say, I don't have all the answers, and in fact, I may not even know all the questions. But I love what Nadia said was, tap into the pre-existing diversity of your organization and crowdsource the bottom-up intelligence of your own organization. Ask them, what's on your mind? What should we think about? How do you think we should solve it? As opposed to a leadership structure made of managers, directors, or executives trying to come up with solutions to problems that they may not even fully comprehend. So lots of parallels, and I love the closing message, Laura, that you said, take care of yourself, because if your cup is empty, you can't serve or nurture other people. So that is, in our culture, there is sometimes it is frowned upon, right? There is a culture where you just drive yourself, to the bone, and taking even a break might be considered in popular culture as a sign of weakness. So I love the fact that you're saying, it's okay. We're going through some very challenging times. It's okay to take care of yourself. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't make you a bad person or a weak person. So lots of powerful messages, practical ideas. I would encourage everyone to contact Laura if you have more questions. We just barely scratched the surface today. This was barely the tip of the iceberg. There's so much beneath the surface. So I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And is there like a drawing for a free book that you would want to
Yes,
share?
yes. So we have this book written by our CEO, Paul Ravati, and Sarvati, I'm sorry. And Paul started this business Insperity with 2 people and grew it to a $4.3 billion business that is now celebrating its 35-year anniversary today. And so what Paul does is, I know it's an exciting day for Insperity all around. So what Paul does in this book is share a lot of the best practices that he put in place to build his business's success, and talk to you about the value and the power behind taking care of your people. The people within your organization are your greatest asset you have in terms of your success. And that's where we need to be focusing a lot of our energy. So it's a great book. It's a great just business manual that I think every entrepreneur and business owner should have in their arsenal when they look at growing their business and growing their team the right way. So if you want to email me, again, let me put that back up here really quick and see if I can. I don't know how to get back. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties. Ravi, I think you have my
Yes, absolutely.
my contact information.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you want to email me, we're going to have a drawing and then we will send you this book. And then, of course, we'd love to hear from everyone here. If you have any questions or like to sit down and just share with us what it is that y'all are doing to build your team and take care of your people.
All right, very good. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and welcome and good luck to this new post-COVID world. It promises to be nothing if not exciting, and a great opportunity for all of us to be agile. Thank you. Keep calm and scrum on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.